The massive transport ship landed on Platform 7 with a thunderous roar that shook the entire spaceport. Kim Tae-ho pressed his face against the small window and watched as strange creatures with too many legs and glowing eyes moved around, outside. "This is so cool," he whispered to his friends, Park. Somin was busy taking pictures with her phone even though the signal wouldn't work this far from Earth, while Lee Jun-woo just stared at everything with wide eyes like a kid seeing snow for the first time. The 3 Korean students had won a lottery to study abroad at the most famous university in the galaxy. They thought they were just going to attend regular classes and maybe learn some alien languages. Nobody told them they had signed up for the deadliest survival course in known space. When the airlock opened with a loud hiss, a creature that looked like a giant praying mantis wearing a lab coat walked in. Professor Veltar stood almost 3 meters tall, with 4 arms covered in shiny green armor. His compound eyes looked like 2 disco balls and clicked his mouthparts when he talked. "Welcome, Deathworlders," he said through a translation device that made his voice sound like a robot. "I am your instructor for survival training." Class 101 Tae-ho raised his hand politely. "Excuse me, sir, but we signed up for Cultural Exchange Program 205. The professor tilted his massive triangular head. The Cultural Exchange Program was cancelled due to a diplomatic incident involving exploding fruit. You have been transferred to our survival course instead. So-min looked worried. "Is that going to be dangerous?" Professor Veltar made a sound like breaking glass, which the translator said meant laughter. "Dangerous. Yes. Most students who take this course are specially trained military personnel from warrior species. You 3 are listed as recreational students from a Death Class 7 world." Jun-woo scratched his head. "What does Death Class 7 mean?" "It means your planet is so hostile that merely living there should have killed you many times over." The professor clicked his mandibles rapidly. "Yet you appear to be completely normal. Soft-skinned mammals with no visible weapons or armor. This is most puzzling." The transport bay doors opened and they walked into the main university complex. The ceiling was so high that clouds had formed near the top. Hundreds of different alien species moved through the corridors like a living rainbow of scales, fur crystals, and energy fields. "Look at that." One So-min pointed at a creature that looked like a floating jellyfish made of purple light. "It's so pretty." The jellyfish creature heard her and glowed brighter with what might have been happiness. Their first stop was the medical bay, where a doctor, who looked like a walking tree with too many eyes, checked their health. The scanner beeped and whistled as it examined each human. "This is impossible," the tree doctor muttered. "Their bone density is 3 times normal for mammals. Their muscle fibers are incredibly dense. And their nervous system response time is faster than most predator species." "Is that bad?" Tae-ho asked. The doctor waved several branch-like arms. "Bad? No, this is remarkable. Your species appears to be naturally adapted for extreme survival conditions. Yet your files say you have no military training, no genetic modifications, and no cybernetic enhancements." Jun-woo shrugged. "We just go to regular school and hang out with friends." After the medical check, they were taken to their dormitory. The building looked like a giant crystal growing out of the ground. Their room was on the 50th floor with a view of 3 different moons hanging in the purple sky. Their roommates were already waiting. A creature that looked like an armored lizard the size of a small car introduced himself as Grimjaw from the warrior clans of Sector Prime. He had scars covering his thick hide and teeth like broken glass. "I have trained for 15 cycles to earn a place in this course," he growled through his translator. "What qualifications do you softskins possess?" Tae-ho thought about it. "I got a merit badge in camping when I was 12. Grimjaw stared at him for a long moment, then made a sound like rocks falling down a mountain, which apparently meant confused laughter. Their other roommate was Wisp, a being made of shifting silver mist who spoke in musical tones. "I am from the cloud cities of Ethros Prime. I can survive in environments with no solid matter and feed on electrical energy. Alone." "What are your special abilities, humans?" So-min looked around the room. "My mom says I'm really good at making friends, and I know how to start a campfire without matches." Wisp flickered uncertainly. "Fire without technological assistance. How is this possible?" "It's not that hard, you just need dry wood and something to make sparks." She demonstrated by rubbing two pencils together, really fast like this. The alien students watched with fascination as she created tiny wisps of smoke from the friction that night they attended their first-class briefing in a huge amphitheater filled with students from across the galaxy. Professor Veltar stood at the center surrounded by holographic displays of terrifying landscapes. Class 101 Survival Training will test your species' natural abilities in 7 different hostile environments, he announced. Each scenario is designed to push you beyond your normal limits. The course has a 30% mortality rate. A student who looked like a giant crab raised one claw. What exactly does mortality rate mean, Professor? It means 30% of students die during the training, Professor Veltar said matter-of-factly. However, this is considered acceptable as the skills learned here are essential for deep space exploration and colonization. Jun-woo leaned over to his friends and whispered in Korean, "I think we might be in trouble." The professor continued, "Your first challenge will take place on Frost Prime, a planet where the average temperature is minus 60 degrees Celsius. The atmosphere contains trace amounts of methane ice, and the wind speeds regularly exceed 100 kilometers per hour." The alien students began checking their equipment lists and discussing strategy. The humans just looked at each other. "That's not too bad," Taeho said quietly. "My uncle lives in Siberia and he says it gets pretty cold there in winter." The professor activated another hologram showing the second challenge. Your second environment will be the toxic jungles of Korthax, where the very air will burn your lungs and every plant produces deadly poison. Somin raised her hand. "That sounds like the camping trip my dad took us on when I was 15. Except for the poison part, Professor." Veltar compound eyes focused on her with interest. "Your species regularly exposes juveniles to hostile environments for recreational purposes." "Well, yeah," she said, "it's fun, and it teaches you how to take care of yourself." The third hologram showed an endless desert. "Your third challenge is the drought plains of Xerion, where water sources are separated by hundreds of kilometers, and the daytime temperature exceeds 50 degrees Celsius." Jun-woo nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds like Gobi Desert. My grandfather used to tell stories about crossing it when he was young." The professor was now clicking his mandibles so rapidly it sounded like a machine gun. "You mean to tell me that your species casually survives conditions similar to our most extreme training environments as part of normal life?" The 3 humans looked confused, pretty much. Taeho said, "Why is that weird?" Professor Veltar realized he was looking at something unprecedented in galactic history. These weren't specially trained warriors or genetically enhanced super soldiers. They were just ordinary members of a species so naturally adapted to survive that they considered deadly environments to be normal parts of life. "Class dismissed," he announced abruptly. "I must review your species files more carefully," as the alien students filed out discussing equipment needs and survival strategies. The 3 humans walked back to their dorm, talking about what they wanted for dinner and whether the cafeteria would have anything that tasted like home. None of them noticed the small army of professors and researchers who were now frantically studying every piece of information they could find about Earth and its impossibly resilient inhabitants. The legend of the Deathworlders was about to begin. The transport ship shuddered as it descended through the atmosphere of Frost Prime. Kim Tae-ho looked out the window at the endless white landscape below and felt a strange sense of comfort. The planet looked exactly like the winters he remembered from his childhood in the mountains of Korea. "This looks just like home," he told So-min and Jun-woo as they prepared their gear. Their alien classmates were putting on massive environmental suits that looked like walking tanks. Grimjaw, the armored lizard warrior, was checking his thermal regulation system for the 5th time, while Wisp, the cloud being, was condensing himself into a specialized containment unit designed to prevent him from freezing solid. The equipment room was chaos, as dozens of different species prepared for the challenge. A crystalline student named Zach was polishing his natural heat-generating organs, while a group of insectoid beings tested their emergency warming pods. "What are you 3 doing?" Professor Veltar asked, as he noticed the humans standing near the exit wearing nothing but thick jackets, boots, and gloves. "Getting ready," Taeho replied simply. "We put on warm clothes." The professor stared at them. "Those are not environmental suits. Where are your thermal regulators? Your oxygen recyclers?" Your emergency heating systems, Jun-woo held up a backpack. We have some extra clothes and some snacks. So-min packed hot chocolate. Hot chocolate, Professor Veltar repeated the words like they were some kind of ancient magic spell. It's a warm drink. So-min explained helpfully. It makes you feel better when it's cold. The professor made rapid clicking sounds with his mandibles as he tried to process this information. These creatures were preparing for an environment that killed most beings within minutes by bringing a recreational beverage. The shuttle doors opened and Arctic wind howled into the compartment. The temperature display showed -70°C. The alien students activated their suits and walked out slowly like robots. The three humans stepped into the blizzard and immediately Taeho started jumping up and down and clapping his hands. "Just getting the blood moving," he shouted over the wind. "It's all about circulation." So-min began, looking around at the landscape while Jun-woo started examining the ice formations and checking the wind direction. The snow was coming down so hard they could barely see 10 meters in any direction. "This is perfect camping weather," So-min announced cheerfully. "The snow will insulate us and the wind means we can predict the weather patterns." Grimjaw, who was watching through his suit's cameras, made a confused growling sound. "How is this perfect? These conditions would kill most species in minutes back. On Earth we call this Tuesday," Jun-woo replied as he began gathering pieces of ice and examining them for density and structure. Within the first hour, the humans had established a basic camp. Taeho found some dead wood buried under the snow, and So-min used her camping skills to build a fire using nothing but friction and dry materials. The flames danced in the wind, creating a warm circle of light in the endless white wasteland. The alien students gathered around their high-tech warming systems and watched in amazement as the humans sat around their primitive fire-sharing stories and actually laughing. "How are they generating so much body heat?" Professor Veltar asked his monitoring team. "The thermal scanners show their core temperature is not only stable but actually rising. It's impossible." Wisp commented from his containment unit, "My species has evolved specifically for extreme temperature survival, and even we require technological assistance in these conditions." Jun-woo had been studying the storm patterns and announced that the weather would clear in about 6 hours. So-min found edible plants buried under the snow that provided both nutrition and liquid, while Taeho created a shelter using branches and packed snow that was more effective than most of the alien technology. On the second day, the storm cleared and the temperature dropped even further to -80°. Several alien students had to be evacuated when their equipment failed, but the humans woke up refreshed and started building what they called snowmen. "What is the purpose of these structures?" Professor Veltar demanded as he watched through the monitoring cameras. "Fun," Taeho replied as he rolled a large ball of snow. "It's just for enjoyment." The professor was taking notes frantically. "The Deathworlders create non-functional structures for psychological well-being during extreme survival situations. This suggests an advanced understanding of mental health maintenance under stress." So-min had discovered that the local wildlife included small furry creatures that were perfectly safe to eat. She created traps using techniques her grandfather had taught her for catching rabbits. The alien students watched in horror as she prepared fresh meat over their campfire. "You are consuming unprocessed organic matter from an unknown ecosystem." Zack the crystalline being warned, "That could contain deadly toxins." "It's fine," So-min said as she seasoned the meat with herbs she had found. "We tested it first small amounts to see if it made us sick. It's actually pretty tasty." Jun-woo meanwhile had figured out how to predict the weather changes by reading the cloud formations and wind patterns, something that usually required advanced atmospheric sensors. His engineering background helped him understand the physics of the storm systems. By the third day, the humans had not only survived, but created a comfortable living space. They had steady food sources, clean water from melted snow, and even entertainment in the form of games they played in the snow. The alien students were struggling despite their advanced technology. Several had to be evacuated due to equipment failures, while others were running low on supplies and energy. The humans invited everyone to join them around their fire. Grimjaw cautiously approached, first his massive armored form, moving slowly through the snow. "How did you learn these skills?" he asked as he settled near the warm flames. "My dad taught me when I was little," Taeho replied. We used to go camping every winter. It was family time. Your species trains juveniles in extreme survival as recreational activity, Grimjaw said slowly. Well, yeah, it's fun, and it teaches you important skills. So Min added as she handed him a cup of hot chocolate. Plus you get to spend time with people you care about. Wisp emerged from his containment unit and hovered near the fire, his silver mist form shimmering in the heat. The warmth feels good, he admitted. I have never experienced comfort in such extreme conditions without technological assistance. The monitoring team was recording everything. Professor Veltar realized he was witnessing something that would change galactic understanding of survival adaptation. These creatures had not just mastered survival, they had turned it into a social bonding experience. On the final day of the challenge, the humans organized what they called a snowball fight. Even some of the alien students joined in, throwing soft-packed snow at each other and making sounds that their translators identified as laughter. This is unprecedented, Professor Veltar reported to the university administration. The Deathworlders have not only survived conditions that defeated our most advanced students, they have created a recreational activity and turned a survival exercise into what they call fun. When the transport ship arrived to collect the students, the aliens were exhausted and depleted, while the humans looked like they had just returned from a pleasant vacation. They had gained weight from the local food sources, their equipment was in perfect condition, and their psychological evaluations showed improved mental health. How do you feel about the challenge? Professor Veltar asked them as they prepared to leave. It was great, Taeho replied. We should do this more often. The professor watched as the three humans helped their alien classmates load their equipment and shared their remaining hot chocolate with everyone. His mandibles clicked rapidly as he realized that everything he thought he knew about survival was about to change. These Deathworlders had just redefined what it meant to adapt to hostile environments, and they had done it while having fun. The shuttle descended through thick green clouds that swirled around the hull like angry smoke. Park So-min pressed her face against the window and watched as the toxic jungles of Korthax came into view. The massive trees stretched up into the atmosphere, their leaves glowing with an eerie purple light. It looks like that nature documentary we watched in high school, she told Kim Tae-ho and Lee Junwoo, except everything is trying to kill us. The briefing room on the shuttle was filled with nervous energy as Professor Veltar explained the challenge. The very air on Korthax contains corrosive chemicals that will burn your respiratory systems, he announced. The plants produce toxins that can kill most species within seconds of contact. The insects carry venom that causes immediate paralysis. The alien students were checking their environmental suits again. Grimjaw was testing his sealed armor system, while Wisp had enclosed himself in a completely isolated containment field. Zack, the crystalline being, was running diagnostics on his air filtration systems. A new student had joined them for this challenge. Vexithera was a warrior from the Dominion fleet, with cybernetic enhancements covering half her body. She had razor-sharp claws, built-in weapons, and skin that could deflect energy blasts. I have conquered 12 death worlds, she announced proudly. This jungle cannot be worse than the acid swamps of Grimlock 7. The equipment distribution took 3 hours as each species received specialized gear. The humans were given basic air filters, face masks, and what looked like camping gear. This is insufficient protection, Vexithara observed as she watched them prepare. Your species will not survive the first hour, Junwoo examined the air filter and shrugged. It's basically like the masks we wear during yellow dust season in Seoul, but heavier. The shuttle doors opened and immediately alarms started blaring as the atmospheric sensors detected the toxic air. The alien students activated their full environmental protection and walked out looking like walking tanks. The three humans put on their simple masks, grabbed their backpacks, and stepped into the jungle. The first thing that hit them was the humidity. It was like walking into a sauna filled with the smell of rotting plants and strange chemicals. Taeho immediately started sweating, but he seemed comfortable. This reminds me of summer in Busan, he said as he looked around at the massive trees. It's hot and sticky, but not too bad. So-min was already examining the plants around them. Most of these look similar to Earth species, she observed. The purple glow probably means they have different chemical compounds, but the basic structure is the same. She approached a large plant with thorns that were dripping green liquid. The other students backed away in terror, but Soman just studied it carefully. "This is interesting." She said the toxin is only in the sap, not the leaves or bark. "It's like poison ivy back home. You just have to know what parts to avoid." Within minutes, she had identified several plants that were safe to touch, and even found some that produced edible fruit. The alien students watched through their suit cameras as she casually picked berries from plants that their sensors labeled as deadly. "How is she not dead?" Wisp wondered from inside his isolation field. Jun-Woo was examining the jungle like an engineering problem. "The trees form a canopy system that protects from rain," he noted. "The soil composition shows good drainage, and there are clear animal paths we can follow." He started building what he called basic tools, using fallen branches and stones. Within an hour, he had created a machete for cutting through thick vegetation, a spear for protection, and a digging stick for finding water. Taeho used his environmental science knowledge to read the ecosystem. He found fresh water by following insect behavior, identified safe sleeping areas by observing where animals rested, and even discovered that some of the scary-looking predators were actually harmless. "That big lizard thing looks dangerous, but see how it moves," he explained to the others. "It's a plant eater. The real predators are probably much smaller and more careful by." The end of the first day, the humans had established a comfortable camp. They had fresh water, a reliable food source, and protection from the worst dangers of the jungle. The alien students were struggling with equipment failures, toxic exposure, and complete confusion about how to navigate the environment. The monitoring team was recording everything with growing amazement. "They are not just surviving," Professor Veltar observed. "They are thriving. The Deathworlders have turned a hostile ecosystem into a functioning habitat in less than 24 hours on the second day." So-Min made a discovery that shocked everyone. She found that several plants labeled as deadly poison were actually medicinal when prepared correctly. "My grandmother used to make tea from plants that were toxic in their raw form," she explained as she carefully processed some roots. "It's all about preparation and dosage." She created natural medicines that helped treat minor injuries, and even found plants that could neutralize some of the jungle toxins. The alien students were amazed as she demonstrated how to make safe remedies from materials their sensors said were lethal. Bexthera, the cybernetic warrior, was having the most trouble. Her heavy armor kept getting caught in the vegetation, her weapons were useless against the environment, and her technological systems were failing in the humid, toxic atmosphere. "How are you soft-skinned mammals surviving better than my military-grade equipment?" she demanded. "We listen to what the jungle is telling us," Taeho replied. "It's not trying to kill us specifically, it's just being itself. We have to adapt to it instead of fighting it." Jun-Woo had created an elaborate shelter system using natural materials and engineering principles. His structure was more stable and comfortable than the high-tech emergency shelters the other students were using. "The key is working with the environment instead of against it," he explained. "It's like building with water, instead of trying to stop it." On the third day, the humans made their most impressive discovery. They found that the jungle had a natural rhythm, and by following it, they could move through safely during certain times of day. The plants release most of their toxins during the night, So-Min explained. During the day, they are focused on photosynthesis and much less dangerous. She had also learned to identify which insects were harmful and which were actually beneficial. Some of the scary-looking bugs were excellent sources of protein, while others helped control the truly dangerous creatures. The alien students began asking for help. Several were on the verge of evacuation due to equipment failures, but the humans shared their knowledge freely. They showed everyone how to identify safe plants, find clean water, and avoid the real dangers. "This is unprecedented in galactic academic history," Professor Veltar reported. "The Deathworlders are not only succeeding where our most advanced students fail, they are teaching survival techniques that our experts never discovered." Grimjaw the warrior lizard was particularly impressed. "You fight the jungle with knowledge instead of weapons," he observed. "This is a warrior technique I have never seen." By the final day, the humans had not only mastered the toxic jungle, they had created what they called a nature preserve. They had mapped safe paths, identified useful resources, and even established friendly relationships with some of the local wildlife. When the extraction shuttle arrived, the alien students were exhausted, poisoned, and completely dependent on their failing technology. The humans emerged from the jungle looking healthy, carrying samples of useful plants and accompanied by several small creatures that seemed to consider them friends. "How do you rate this challenge?" Professor Veltar asked them. "It was like summer camp but with more interesting plants." So-Min replied, "We learned a lot, and the wildlife here is really beautiful once you understand it." The professor realized that these Deathworlders had just redefined what it meant to survive in a hostile environment. They had not conquered the jungle, they had joined it, and made it their home. The transport ship flew over the endless golden dunes of Zerion Prime while Li Junwu watched the heat waves shimmer in the distance. The desert stretched to every horizon, without a single sign of water or life. The temperature gauge showed 55 degrees Celsius in the shade, and there was no shade anywhere. "This looks worse than the Gobi Desert my grandfather told me about," he said to Kim Tae-ho and Park So-Min. "But at least it's dry heat instead of humid." The alien students were preparing for what many considered the deadliest challenge yet. Grimjaw was checking his water recycling system that could process his own waste back into drinking water. Wisp had condensed into his most efficient form to minimize water loss, while Zack was calibrating his internal moisture extraction organs, Vexithera. The cybernetic warrior had brought enough water supplies to last a small army. Her mechanical parts included advanced hydration systems, and she carried backup containers that could sustain her for weeks. "This environment will separate the survivors from the casualties," she announced confidently. "Water is life, and I have brought enough life to conquer this wasteland." Professor Veltar reviewed the challenge parameters with growing concern. "The average survival time for most species on Zerion is 6 hours without technological assistance," he explained. "The sand absorbs moisture from any organic matter. The sun will dehydrate you faster than most beings can consume water." New students had joined for this challenge, including Crixie and Sectoid, being from a water world who needed constant moisture to survive, and Thorn, a rock creature who could store water in his mineral matrix, but needed massive amounts to function. Equipment distribution was extensive. Each alien student received industrial water purification systems, solar stills, atmospheric moisture collectors, and emergency hydration injectors. The humans were given basic camping gear and empty water bottles. "This is inadequate," Crix buzzed anxiously through his translator. "Your species will desiccate within the first hour." Junwu examined the empty bottles and smiled. "These are perfect," he said. "We can use them for water collection." The shuttle landed on a flat area of hard-packed sand, and immediately the heat hit them like opening an oven door. The alien students activated their environmental suits and began setting up their complex water extraction equipment. The 3 humans stepped out wearing light-colored clothing, wide-brimmed hats, and carrying their simple gear. They immediately began examining the landscape, while the other students struggled with their heavy machinery. "Look at the rock formations over there." Tae-ho pointed to some distant cliffs. "There will be shadow and possibly underground water sources." So-Min was studying the sand and the sparse vegetation. "Even in places this dry, there are usually plants that store water," she observed. "These little shrubs probably have moisture in their roots." Junwu began what he called engineering the environment. He used their empty bottles and clear plastic sheets to create solar stills that could extract water from the air using only sunlight and condensation. "It's basic physics," he explained to the fascinated alien students. "You heat air that contains moisture, then cool it rapidly and the water condenses. You can get drinking water from even very dry air." Within hours, the humans had established multiple water collection points. Their solar stills were producing steady amounts of clean water, while the alien students' machinery was overheating and breaking down in the extreme conditions. "How is this possible?" Vexithara demanded, as she watched her advanced systems fail one by one. "My equipment costs more than most planets' annual budgets. Technology sometimes makes things more complicated than they need to be." Tai-Ho replied as he showed her how to create shade using reflective materials. "Simple solutions often work better in extreme conditions." So-min had been tracking what looked like empty desert but had found signs of underground water. She followed insect behavior and subtle changes in plant growth to locate areas where water was closer to the surface animals. And plants are the best indicators, she explained. Most life finds water even when technology can't detect it. You just have to know what to look for. She also discovered that several desert plants could provide both nutrition and hydration. The prickly, pear-like cacti contained sweet liquid, while certain roots could be processed into nutritious paste. Junwoo created an elaborate shelter system using their basic materials and engineering principles. His shade structure reflected heat during the day and retained warmth at night, while his water collection system continued working even while they slept. The key is working with the desert instead of fighting it, he told the struggling alien students. During the day you rest and conserve energy. At night, when it's cooler, you move and work. But what amazed the monitoring team most was how the humans maintained their psychological health in conditions that drove most species to despair. They told stories, shared their limited resources, and continued to help each other even when water was scarce. They are exhibiting advanced stress management techniques. Professor Veltar observed, their cortisol levels remain stable even under extreme dehydration pressure. On the second day, several alien students were experiencing serious problems. Crix, the waterworld insectoid, was becoming dangerously dehydrated despite his advanced equipment, while Thorn was using his emergency water reserves faster than anticipated. The humans invited them to share their shelter and water sources. So-min showed Crix how to create cooling areas using wet cloth and air circulation, while Junwoo helped Thorn understand how to minimize water loss through better positioning and timing your species shares resources even when survival is uncertain. Grimjaw observed with amazement, this goes against basic survival instincts. Family and friends take care of each other. Taiho replied simply, if we all survive together, we are all stronger. By the third day, the humans had not only found multiple water sources, but had actually gained weight by discovering nutritious desert foods. The monitoring equipment showed they were healthier than when the challenge started. Meanwhile, the alien students were struggling with equipment failures, heat exhaustion, and complete inability to adapt to the environment. Several needed emergency evacuation, while others were barely surviving on backup systems. The humans organized what they called a desert survival school. They taught everyone how to find water signs, recognize edible plants, create effective shelter, and manage energy during extreme heat. This knowledge should take years to acquire, Vexthera said, as she learned to identify underground water signs. How did you master it so quickly? My grandfather lived through drought seasons and taught my father who taught me. Taiho explained, every generation passes on survival knowledge. It's part of growing up. So-min added, we also learn by watching nature. Everything we need to know is usually right there if we pay attention. Junwoo was showing other students how to create tools from desert materials. When you understand basic principles, you can adapt them to any environment. He said, engineering is just organized. Problem solving. On the fourth day, they made an incredible discovery. The humans had located an underground spring by following animal tracks and plant behavior. They created a sustainable water source that could support the entire group. The alien students gathered around this miracle water source while the humans continued their normal activities, as if finding water in an impossible desert was completely ordinary. Professor Veltar was updating his reports with growing amazement. The Deathworlders have not only survived, they have transformed a lethal environment into a functional habitat. They have achieved in days what our experts said was impossible. When the extraction ship arrived, the humans were teaching desert survival techniques to a group of alien students who had gone from near death to healthy and confident. The humans looked like they had just returned from a pleasant camping trip. How do you rate this challenge? Professor Veltar asked. It was educational, So-min replied. We learned that deserts are not empty places, they are full of life if you know how to see it. The professor realized that these remarkable beings had just redefined desert survival. They had proven that with knowledge, cooperation, and respect for the environment, even the most hostile places could become home. The final 3 challenges passed like a blur of impossible achievements that left the entire galactic academic community speechless. Kim Tae-ho, Park So-min, and Lee Junwoo had conquered an ocean world by building boats from floating debris and catching fish with improvised nets. They survived a volcanic planet by creating air filters from clothing and finding safe paths through lava fields using basic geology knowledge. The Zero-Gravity Asteroid Field Challenge was supposed to be the ultimate test where most students needed years of specialized training just to move without getting sick. The humans adapted in less than an hour, treating it like an underwater swimming experience and using momentum physics that Junwoo remembered from high school science class. Professor Veltar stood in his office surrounded by data screens showing impossible results. Every measurement, every analysis, every comparison with galactic survival databases showed the same conclusion. These three, ordinary students from Earth had achieved what military specialists and survival experts could barely accomplish, with decades of training and advanced technology. The final debriefing session was attended by university administrators, professors, from dozens of species and even some government officials who had heard rumors about the legendary Deathworlders. The great amphitheater was packed with beings from across the galaxy, all wanting to witness history. Professor Veltar clicked his mandibles nervously as he began his presentation. Students, faculty, and distinguished guests, we are here to discuss the most remarkable survival training results in galactic academic history. The holographic displays showed comparison charts that made the audience gasp in amazement. The three humans had completed every challenge with perfect scores, while maintaining better physical and psychological health than students who used the most advanced survival technology available. But the most shocking statistic was their resource efficiency. The humans had used less equipment, consumed fewer supplies, and required no medical intervention while achieving results that surpassed specially trained military units. How is this possible? Demanded Admiral Corex, a high-ranking military officer whose species specialized in conquest warfare. My elite soldiers trained for decades to achieve half these results. Professor Veltar gestured to the three humans who sat calmly in the front row looking slightly embarrassed by all the attention. Perhaps they can explain themselves. Teho stood up first and looked around at the hundreds of alien faces staring at him. We did not really do anything special, he said through the translation system. We just used things our parents and grandparents taught us when we were children. The audience buzzed with confused conversations. Children, someone whispered. How can children learn advanced survival techniques? Somin joined him at the podium. On Earth, everyone learns basic survival skills as part of growing up. She explained. We go camping with our families, we learn to swim. We play outside in all kinds of weather. Our parents teach us how to be safe and take care of ourselves, but these are extreme conditions. Vexithara, the cybernetic warrior, protested. You survived environments that killed trained soldiers. Junwoo shrugged. My grandmother always said that humans are like dandelions. We can grow anywhere and adapt to anything. I thought she was just being encouraging, but maybe she was right. The audience fell silent as the implications began to sink in. These Deathworlders had casually mastered the most challenging survival course in the galaxy, using techniques they learned as recreational activities. During childhood, Professor Veltar displayed images from Earth showing human children playing in snow, building treehouses, swimming in rivers, and camping in forests. The alien audience watched in stunned amazement as they realized that Earth children regularly experience conditions that would be considered extreme survival training on most worlds. Your species exposes juveniles to hostile environments for entertainment purposes, Admiral Corex said, slowly. Well, yes, it's fun and educational, Teho, replied Plus. You get to spend time with your family and friends. Dr. Helix, a renowned xenobiologist, raised several tentacled appendages. But how do you coordinate your survival efforts without formal military training? Most species require extensive command structure to function in extreme conditions. We just help each other. Somin said simply. When someone needs something and you can provide it, you share. When someone knows something useful, they teach everyone else. It's just natural. The alien. Scholars were taking notes frantically, trying to understand how an entire species could naturally exhibit advanced group survival behaviors without any formal training or command hierarchy. But the biggest revelation came when Professor Veltar asked about their educational background. What specialized survival training did you receive before coming here? The three humans looked confused. None of them said Taeho had studied environmental science at a regular university. So-min had joined outdoor recreation clubs for fun. Junwoo was just an engineering student who wanted to see space. You mean to tell me Admiral Korex demanded that you achieved these impossible results with no military training, no genetic modifications, no cybernetic enhancements, and no specialized education? Pretty much, Junwoo replied. We just did what seemed logical and tried to help each other. The amphitheater erupted in chaos as representatives from dozens of species began shouting questions and demanding explanations. The implications were staggering. If ordinary humans could achieve these results, what were their trained specialists capable of? Professor Veltar called for order and displayed the final analysis. Earth is not just a Death Class 7 world, he announced. It is beyond our classification system. Any planet that produces beings this naturally adapted to extreme survival represents a new category of life. The audience gasped as the professor continued. Furthermore, these Deathworlders have demonstrated that their survival abilities are not individual achievements but species-wide characteristics. They work together instinctively, share resources without negotiation, and maintain psychological stability under impossible stress. Dr. Helix. Tentacled arms waved excitedly. This suggests that their entire evolution was shaped by surviving conditions that would kill most galactic species. This is not just remarkable, it is unprecedented. The three Korean students sat quietly as hundreds of alien beings discussed their species like they were some kind of miracle. They had simply done what felt natural, and now they were being called the greatest survival specialists in galactic history. When the session finally ended, Admiral Korex approached them directly. I would like to offer your species membership in the Galactic Defense Alliance, he said. Your natural abilities would be invaluable. Thanks, but we are just college students. Taeho replied politely. We want to finish our education and go home to our families. The Admiral stared at him. You could have positions of honor, resources beyond imagination, the chance to shape galactic policy. That sounds like a lot of responsibility. So-min said. We just wanted to study abroad and maybe learn some alien languages. As news of the Deathworlders spread across the galaxy Earth, became the most famous planet in known space. The Galactic University established the Human Studies Department, and survival instructors from hundreds of worlds came to learn from the species that had redefined what it meant to survive. Professor Veltar kept a holographic recording of the three humans teaching alien students how to build a campfire while sitting around discussing their favorite foods from home. He showed it to new classes as an example of why the universe was more wonderful and surprising than any textbook could explain. The official university motto was changed to, If you want to learn how to survive impossible odds, learn from the species that calls the impossible Tuesday. And in a small dormitory room, 3 Korean college students continued doing their homework, calling their families and planning what to study next, completely unaware that they had become the most famous survival legends in galactic history. They had proven that sometimes the most extraordinary abilities come from the most ordinary places, and that the greatest strength is often found in simply caring for each other.